Hey guys, welcome to the latest episode of the 4040 Vision podcast, the ultimate sports history pod where hindsight is 4040. We're so excited to jump into today's episode, but before we do, here's a quick word from one of our sponsors. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 4040 Vision podcast. I'm your host, Khaled Abdallah, and today's podcast is about the LIV Golf Takeover of the PGA Tour. And with me today is a special guest, Amaar Burton, who is the founder and editor at MuslimSportsTalk.com and a copy editor at The Ringer. How's everything going today, Amaar?
Going pretty good, man. How you doing?
Good. So the reason I asked you on, Amaar, is, as you know, is because you wrote an article on MuslimSportsTalk.com about Saudi Arabia's sports takeover triggering Islamophobia. And I thought it was a really interesting angle to this whole topic, which has been, super fascinating to me. And I wanted to bring you on and talk about this. We won't get too much into golf strategy or anything like that, but we'll talk about some of the business aspects and some of the other political and social aspects of the takeover. So we'll start from the beginning. How closely have you followed the emergence of LIV Golf and some of the machinations that are happening in the background?
Yeah, I've kind of been, since LIV Golf kind of came onto the scene, a couple years ago. I'd been following the story not so much from the golf side. I mean, I'm not a golf fan. I don't play the game. I always joke that, when I get old, my retired guy sport's going to probably be bowling. I don't see myself out there on the links. But just from the business side of this LIV Golf and the political side and kind of the media coverage and public perception, that was kind of what interested me in this. And so since then, I've been following, everything that's been going on, and with the tour launching and their feud with the PGA, and then this recent merger. So that's kind of been my kind of angle, or the way I've been looking at it.
Yeah. So what did you think of some of their tactics, I would say, to try to steal some of the fanfare from the PGA, whether it's paying guys a ton of money or basically just throwing money at the problem and trying to take over? What did you think of that approach?
I mean, it was an aggressive approach, and I feel like if you're going to do a startup, a league in any sport, whether it's golf or football or basketball, and usually the issue with a startup is they don't have as much talent. We look at all these other, every alternative football league that starts up every year. That's kind of the one thing that keeps fans away, is well, we know these aren't the best players in the world, so why am I going to watch this instead of the NFL? So with LIV Golf, it's if you're going to go out there and really try to challenge the PGA, then you're going to have to get the best players in the world, and those guys are on the PGA. So, it's you can't do nothing but respect that approach. It's just okay, we're going to try to get to that, the talent. And as far as, was that a sustainable model? I think as long as they had the money there, as long as the investors were willing to fund it, it could have been sustainable. I mean, I think, the key with any kind of new sports league is do the people who are paying for it, how long do they want to keep paying for it? If it isn't a hit right away, if it's not making a ton of money right away, how long do they want to keep it up? You look at any other startup league that folds, it's because the people who are funding it just decide, okay, I'm out, we're not making enough money. We didn't get enough TV deal, whatever the case may be. So I don't know how long the Saudi investment fund was going to be willing to stick with it if it didn't, if they never merged with PGA, and, if they didn't, pop and, start making a lot of profit. But, that's probably what it would have came down to, is just how much they were willing to pay. And, how much they were budgeting. I mean, we can look at it and say, they have $600 billion. It doesn't mean they want to spend all that on golf, right? Yeah. It's they're going to have a line where it's okay, we've spent this amount of money on it. That's enough. So also, I think sustainability, some of the different things they were trying to do as far as how the game was played, how they structured their events, they were doing Their tournaments were shorter. They tried to kind of do some different rules, which you often see with a new sports league. Is, they try to do something different, to differentiate themselves from, in this case, the PGA. And usually those are kind of hit or miss. I do think that trying to make things shorter was a smart move. I mean, just because of people's attention spans nowadays. I've always said like NASCAR probably needs to cut their races in half. I know
like the Indy 250 or something.
Yeah. Like, Major League Baseball and, college football, they're always looking for ways to kind of speed the game up. So,
yeah. I mean, baseball's doing it with the pitch clock, and it's working really well. As a casual baseball fan, it's awesome. Yeah. It's a way better experience. So,
right. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. That's getting a lot of positive feedback, and so I think LIV Golf trying to do that, their tournaments they were 54 holes instead of 72, not having a cut, a cut line, which I think was pretty smart, because if I were the type of fan where I was just tuning into a golf tournament to watch like one player and then he misses the cut after day 2, it's like, why am I going to keep watching? So having it where it's like, okay, well, if I tuned in to watch this guy and I know he's going to play the whole time, then that's a pretty smart move.
That's a really cool thing. I didn't know that. I mean, and I think we've seen a lot of times. I mean, all the things that you brought up about like the outside talent, the minor league aspect of it, the innovation that comes from being a startup league. I keep thinking about the XFL and the fact that they're the ones that introduced that spider cam. That's almost in every soccer, football broadcast now. They're the ones that did that. And they're able to take those risks and stuff. Do you think the PGA would adopt any of these changes, maybe from what LIV introduced?
The thing I'd say with the PGA, maybe with the merger. I mean, maybe they would be. I mean, but golf has just been, from what I know, just such a traditionalist sport, and like so married to their history and slow to really change anything, and kind of. Just a really we're all about the history and the tradition, and these are the rules and we're not changing them. And so I know golf doesn't like to be gimmicky, or the PGA at least doesn't like to be gimmicky. So I don't know if they would accept some of those or, adopt some of those changes, maybe just because of how this merger is structured, with LIV having a lot more say and a lot more power than maybe the smaller league would in a typical merger. Then, maybe they could do that.
Yeah, golf is such a niche sport that they're able to get away with sticking to that tradition and being so slow to move, because again, it's a niche sport. You can only for the most part, certain class of people are able to watch and play it. So they are able to get away with these sort of things. So there was one other thing that you mentioned about the people being able to access and watch the startup league and making that easy. So I think one thing that I was reading about was, as the LIV Tour was starting to kick off, they had a lot of trouble finding a TV rights partner because probably, you think the big networks probably don't want to upset the PGA, especially like CBS. They have the Masters and some of these other ones. So I think they ended up on DAZN, which is a streaming service. I think it's a little more popular in Canada, but it's more known for boxing than anything else. Did you watch any of the broadcasts by any chance? And if you did, what did you think of the quality of the presentation and the broadcast?
Yeah, I didn't really watch any of the broadcast. I mean, they got a TV deal with the CW.
Oh, that's right.
A lot. But a lot of their access, it was through streaming services, and the fact that they didn't kind of get the big traditional TV deal was probably somewhat of a red flag. And that was something a lot of people pointed to, was like, okay, this is going to struggle. They didn't get a big deal with ESPN or Fox Sports or whatever. So, but no, personally, I mean, I don't really watch it. I mean, like I said, I don't really watch the PGA. But I do know a lot of people that play golf and are really into golf, and just what I heard from them, there were criticisms of just how the productions were, how the LIV events were, whether that was from a talent standpoint, production value, things like that. And, and I understand part of that might be people that just kind of have a pro PGA bias, or anti-live bias, kind of just looking for something that's wrong with it and just, kind of in that mindset where they don't want it to be good. And, it's something new and different, like we talked about, that's new and different isn't always embraced by golf and golf fans. But yeah, I mean, from everything I heard, like there was, a difference. I mean, it was a startup. It was going to take a while to get up to speed to maybe, ever catch up to the PGA or like ever overtake it, but they did have like good, talent. I mean, I was just looking at some of the names of some of the golfers that LIV signed. And I mean, it was just me as a, very casual golf fan. Like I recognize a lot of the names. So
yeah, they had plenty of talent in terms of the actual golfers. Maybe the talent gap in the broadcast, that you're not able to get the top commentators and stuff like that. Like you wouldn't get, Joe Buck and Troy Aikman doing an XFL game, even if it's the XFL Super Bowl or whatever they call it. So I can see why. I mean, from my, again, casual golf fan outlook, when I was watching it, I watched a couple holes here and there, mostly on Twitter, highlights, things like that. It seemed very much like the normal PGA broadcast, but I guess without like Jim Nantz or some of those other key voices. So, but yeah, it is a startup, so you got to start somewhere. So I wanted to shift gears a little bit and maybe touch a little bit on what you talked about in your article. And I think one of the key arguments that was being made in the world of, like social commentary and stuff like that was the PGA, in an attempt to keep the LIV group at bay, whatever, they kind of weaponized some of that anti-Saudi sentiment, maybe even some Islamophobic sentiment against LIV. So can you tell me a little bit about how they did that and what some of their main arguments were?
Yeah, I mean, the PGA commissioner, Jay Monahan, I mean, he made a lot of headlines with, he took the kind of firebrand approach, he kind of hitting on the touchy subjects. He brought up 9/11, kind of invoked that, just kind of did the typical, if you're supporting anything that has anything to do with Saudi Arabia, you're supporting, their, a regime that has a bad human rights record. You're supporting, terrorism, and you're supporting violence, and you're supporting, a country that doesn't treat women well and doesn't treat migrant workers well. And yeah, I mean, it was a lot of the stuff I've heard. Like, I'm a pro wrestling fan, and when WWE started working with Saudi Arabia and bringing shows over there, it was the same stuff, the same.
Yeah, I remember hearing a lot of that same talk.
That a lot of people had for, how could they run shows there, knowing, what the Saudi government is known for, what their reputation is, what people believe their history is. So that was, some of what the PGA did. Just also doing, I mean, as far as dealing with their golfers, like tactics, like, threatening to, any golfer that worked with LIV, PGA was going to ban them for life and you can't come back, if you go work for LIV, and just trying to discourage any of their golfers from going over to the other side, which is, again, that happens in sports. I mean, again, me being a wrestling fan, it happens in wrestling. Guys try to go from one promotion to the next, and some companies might, you kind of use that threat. Okay, well, if you go over there, you can't ever come back over here. So, think twice before you do that. So, yeah, and with the PGA, I mean, it was just a lot of kind of tactics to just make LIV look bad, which had nothing to do with the actual golf product and just kind of everything to do with them being aligned with Saudi Arabia.
Mm-hmm. And you cover this in your article, that some of the irony involved with this line of thinking and this, the way that this message was being put out into the world. Can you touch on that a little bit and what the ironic aspect of this kind of attitude is?
Yeah, I found that ironic because, you look at the PGA, they run, most of their events are run in the U.S. and everything that you could say about Saudi Arabia, you could say about the U.S. As far as
Very true. Very true.
war and going to other countries, committing violence, and just domestically, human rights abuses, mistreatment of women, mistreatment of minorities, mistreatment of migrant workers, slavery. If you name it, it happens in America. And
it's a long rap sheet. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And every powerful country has that rap sheet, and so to kind of single out Saudi Arabia is this is a place that you can't do business with because look at all the stuff they've done. And I'm like, well, look at the stuff that the US has done, look at the stuff that happens in Europe, and there's no objection to doing business there. So I found that kind of ironic and almost hypocritical to kind of take that angle on it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's that additional layer of, while we're being told by the PGA or, whoever else, WWE fans that, we shouldn't be doing business with Saudi Arabia, blah, blah. At the same time, our government is doing a lot of business with them with arms deals and all kinds of other stuff.
Too.
We have military bases there. We have oil compounds there. So it's a very multi-layered relationship. It's not just about sports, but I think you brought up a really good point in your article, just how this is, it's conflating working with, what Saudi people have done, perhaps when it comes to 9/11 or some other things with the entire government, and just the fact that, there's that tinge of racism that comes into the picture whenever, a foreign entity, especially a black or brown foreign entity,
right,
is exercising some power there. So what do you think ultimately caused the PGA to cave and merge with LIV? Because it seemed like from the outside looking in that this was going to be a long, drawn-out battle. There's going to be a ton of money being thrown around on both sides. So what kind of, I don't want to use this phrase here, but which straw broke the camel's back in this situation?
From everything I've heard, it was the ton of money that was going to get thrown around. You could say that the PGA was, kind of on top as far as the public relations battle, especially, on the American side. It's not hard to get people in America to, dislike Saudi Arabia. But when it came to the money, just from everything I heard, it was once the PGA was unable to kind of nip the LIV problem in the bud right off the bat, and they didn't just, okay, this is a new competitor, we kind of got rid of them. And LIV was kind of, okay, they're going to stick around for a while. Now we're in this battle that could become financial, and they're not going to be able to outspend LIV's investors. Again, if those investors want to really do this and spend that money, the PGA, it was just going to be a lot of long, expensive battles for them. And I think they just were kind of like, okay, we're not going to win this on the money side, so let's see if we can work together. It's just cheaper for them to work together. And then a lot of people involved in PGA were going to make a lot of money if they decide to work together. So, as is often the case in pro sports, it really, I think, just came down to money, money and business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And of course, Saudi Arabia has, like we've talked about, pretty almost an endless, budget that they can spend on this. Of course, they would probably set a budget, but as they can be stubborn with the money, and the money we've seen, in the past with Qatar and the way that they got the World Cup and the money that they threw around for that and the money that they threw at the game. If you have enough money, you can pretty much solve any problem that you want in sports. Even if public opinion is not quite on your side, eventually you're going to win out. And it seems like, from my understanding, the PGA is going to still be in control, but the LIV Golf or the Saudi investment fund, whatever, they're going to be quite involved, but they won't have the final say on a lot of things. So do you think that this was their plan all along, was to force that merger?
I know that's a popular theory. I don't know if that was their plan. I think, they put a lot of money into funding this startup. And I think that it's just as likely that their plan was just to create a existing alternative to the PGA that was just going to go along. And, even if it never overtook the PGA, but it could have been a strong number two. I think their goal was to, find where they can make profit. And whether that was LIV existing on its own or merging with the PGA, I think that was their ultimate goal. When the opportunity presented itself to merge with the PGA, I mean, they obviously jumped on it, which was probably, a smart move. Just because PGA, it's like, they've already got the name, they've already got the infrastructure, all that kind of stuff. They've already got a lot of that talent. It's like, well, now you don't have to pay $400 million to Tiger Woods because, now he's in the fold. So, cool. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of speculation on like whether that was their goal from the start to merge, because that is the case with, I think, some other kind of startup sports leagues. They're like, okay, well, we'll just make enough noise and then maybe they'll absorb us and, we'll go from there. But yeah, I mean, I think that, it's just as likely that LIV wanted to actually just be their own thing, which could have worked. I mean, I think there's room in the world for two major golf organizations. Like, I don't think it has to be just one,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, golf is a global sport. They play all over the world. They play in the Emirates. They play in Europe, all that. And you brought up a good point about some of those other startup leagues. I mean, it's been a while, but, back in the day, the ABA was eventually acquired by the NBA. They got rid of a few teams, but they absorbed some of that.
AFL and the NFL.
Yeah, AFL and NFL merged. I think the AHL and the NHL, I think they merged as well. There was like the original 6 or 7 AHL teams that joined the NHL. So there's definitely a history.
With like some MMA organizations and stuff like that too. Kind of there might
probably.
But yeah, and lost my train of thought. I was going to say something else about the
all good about the mergers.
Yeah, but
yeah, it's a very common thing, and I think even outside of the sports world, you think about a tech startup or something like that. For the most part, their goal is to be acquired. It's like, let's make enough noise. Definitely. Let's take enough of these niche users, and then hopefully we'll get bought by Google or Apple or Microsoft or whatever and get cashed out. But this was like the opposite situation where the bigger fish, in terms of at least the pool of money, was the one that ended up getting acquired. And I think it's because, like you said, PGA has the history, has the name, and it's a lot easier to afford a Tiger Woods if he's already in the fold, like you said.
Right. Oh, what I was thinking was the sustainability of like two major golf leagues. I think also could have worked because golfers have a longer career. You know what I mean? It's not the best players in the world can be that from 25 to age 50. So it's like, it's not, like basketball where it's like, okay, you got this window from, 19 to like, 35 or whatever. So yeah, I mean, there's a big enough talent pool, I think, in golf to where, PGA could have had a lot of stars on their side, LIV could have had a lot of stars on their side, and it still would have worked.
And yeah, I mean, golf even has like the senior PGA Tour, so maybe even older than 50, the LIV, they could have gotten some of these big names, once they were older. Maybe they didn't want to compete in like major tournaments or things like that, so they could have invited those guys. And we've seen the ability of a name, a big name, to attract fans across different sports. Like, with Messi coming to MLS, for example, a lot of people that have never watched an MLS game in their life are going to be tuning in. They're going to be buying jerseys, going to games, stuff like that. So, maybe LIV, maybe down the line they said, we'll get the Messi of golf in Tiger Woods and have him join. But anyway, so I think the one of the things or the angles here is that people have talked a lot about Saudi Arabia trying to do or attempting to do a form of sports washing. So I think it was either 2015 or 2016, the new king of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Sultan, MBS, as he's known, kind of launched this initiative to modernize Saudi Arabia, to diversify their portfolio, to improve their public image. They did a couple things like, allowing women to drive, opening their borders a little bit more, having stuff like WWE events, and welcoming more foreign people to the country, more European, Western folks. So what do you think of that as a criticism of Saudi Arabia, saying that the reason that they're buying, Newcastle United, or the reason that they're buying all these, expensive soccer players and nationalizing a few of the teams and launching LIV Golf is a form of sports washing for people to overlook some of the things that you talked about with the human rights abuses and other things like that? What do you think of that criticism?
Yeah. When I hear that criticism, I think it's like they make it sound more sinister than what it might be. I think that, obviously there's a PR positive of being involved in sports, right? You look at on a smaller level, like Mark Cuban, right? Who would know who Mark Cuban was if he didn't own the Dallas Mavericks? He would be a rich tech guy, but he's become a celebrity from owning an NBA team. He's got a cool factor to him now. He's on Shark Tank. He makes movie cameos here and there. Like, that doesn't happen most likely doesn't happen if he was just doing what he was doing to get rich in the first place and he didn't get involved in pro sports, right? Who would know who Jerry Jones is if he didn't own the Dallas Cowboys? He'd be some, rich, I don't know, was he in oil? I'm not sure how he got rich.
Yeah, oil baron of some kind.
Yeah, he'd be like a rich oil guy in Oklahoma, but he owns the Dallas Cowboys, so he's on TV, he's in movies, he's a celebrity, right? And everyone who's involved in the Saudi investment fund, everyone who's advising them, they know this. They know that being involved in sports, it does help your image. I don't think that it cleans up your image. I don't think that we're in a world anymore where people they could be misinformed to the point where they don't know anything about Saudi Arabia except they own some sports teams and they own a sports league. Nobody, we know Cuba has a great baseball team, but we know so much more about Cuba. So them having a great baseball team doesn't make us overlook or forget anything else that's going on there. I just don't think we live in that kind of society anymore. We have too much access to information. The media is too big. It reports on everything. So if sports washing was a goal for Saudi in getting involved in this, I don't think that was a very realistic goal, because it's not, they're not going to sports wash. Everyone's going to still know, everyone's still going to think what they think about the country, and they're going to have whatever opinions they already had. Them owning a soccer team isn't going to change that, So, and when I watch the WWE shows, in Saudi, they do like these, tourism ads and kind of these like PSAs about, positive things that they're doing, which is to be expected. I mean, the same thing happens when WWE goes to, Philadelphia. They'll do some like local, hey, come to Philadelphia and visit, right? That's just kind of normal stuff, that goes on with sports and with entertainment. But when they talk about sports washing, they kind of make it seem like it's this underhanded, thing that like, oh, they're trying to get involved in golf so they can get away with all this other stuff they're doing. And like, I just don't think that's the case, hosting the Olympics didn't sports wash China or Russia.
That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Like Donald Sterling and Daniel Snyder, they didn't, people didn't overlook or forget what they were doing because they own sports teams. So it's not really, it might be a concept, it might be a goal. I just don't think it's a reasonable or realistic one today. So I don't think that's a good point. Yeah. It's like, might be part of like the overall, like, but it's a positive that comes with it, but that can't be the overall goal.
Yeah, I think it might be one of the goals, and there is definitely that PR aspect of it, of wanting to have some positive PR come out of your country. Same thing like you mentioned, China and Russia didn't sports wash everything that they do or did since then. But I do think there is some, obviously it's part of their goal is to diversify their portfolio, but also to maybe not change public opinion, but give people something positive to say about Saudi Arabia, which, which for a long time, the main thing people talked about was, of course, human rights abuses, 9/11 if you're in America, and some of the other things, that some of the stereotypes and stuff about the people and the country. So I think that is part of the goal. It's definitely not the only goal. And I think, like you said, it's not quite as sinister as some people want to paint it. And I think another way I look at it is kind of like Qatar with the World Cup, is it's a means of like modernization, right? When you're opening your doors to other people, in case of the World Cup, you're literally welcoming the world into your country. There's things that you have to do to get up to speed with everyone else. You're going to have to modernize, your infrastructure. You're going to have to, maybe your society might change a little bit as a reflection of that. And in the case of Saudi Arabia, with what MBS is trying to do and have Saudi Arabia catch up to the rest of the world, I think that this is one of the means to do that, but it's not necessarily like a sinister thing. Like, oh, everyone's going to forget that we're at war with Yemen because we have a golf league. Like it's not how it works. You know what I mean? Or Russia, for example, like they're not going to worry about us trying to annex Crimea because we're hosting the Olympics. It's just something that happens. And it's something that, as part of like a global, sports fan or sports fan base, like these are things that you want to tap into, and you want to be able to have some positive things being said about you, which is, again, was not the usual when it came to Saudi Arabia. So
yeah, and I think with some places like Qatar, it's kind of like, it also might have been just hey, it's okay to come here, because I think a lot of people just kind of think, okay, I can't go over there, and so it was just like and that's what some of the tourism ads, like with Saudi Arabia, it's just like, you might not think it's okay to come here, but like, no, it's okay, come along. And another angle to look at it from is, in some cases, getting involved in big time sports like this actually is going to call more attention to whatever negativity is involved.
That's a great point.
Yeah. If Saudi Arabia wasn't involved in LIV Golf, would we be talking about Saudi Arabian politics on ESPN? Like, so if anything, like it opens up the visibility of that country to people who weren't thinking about it. I see the argument that, oh, well, they're trying to get involved in sports, so we're not focusing on, human rights abuses. And I'm like, in all honesty, were you focusing on their human rights abuses in the first place? Or did you just start talking about it after they got involved in these sports? So that could actually be a, negative byproduct of Saudi getting involved in sports, is that it actually calls more attention and has more people talking about the things that they don't want them talking about than, we're talking about it before. So,
yeah. And it can even flip into that positive, because again, we use Qatar as an example, as I think as a result of all of the attention that came from hosting the World Cup and trying to build these stadiums and things like that. I mean, it was super, unfortunate and tragic that the migrant workers that lost their lives and were treated, mistreated during the build up to it. But, as a result of that attention, from everything I've read, that conditions there have gotten better because people are paying attention, and, they've made some changes to their laws and regulations around the treatment of migrant workers and workers' rights and things like that. So, it can be a net positive at the end of the day. And I think with Saudi Arabia, if they are opening the doors to foreign investment a little more and to foreign people coming to their country, it is going to lead to some modernization and some changes. And the thing that you said in the beginning was brilliant, when you said, we want to tell people that it's okay to come here. And I think, Saudi Arabia and Qatar, they're probably looking at Dubai and all these celebrities and the tourism industry there. And Dubai has very similar laws to Saudi Arabia and Qatar. It's still a conservative country. They still have certain laws about drugs and public displays of affection, all kinds of stuff. But people feel comfortable going there. So I'm sure that they're looking at that like, oh, we can get people to come here too. We can get some more foreign investment and tourism.
No, yeah, you see celebrities and just regular people just bragging on social media about, hey, we're going to Dubai, but you don't really see that with them going to Qatar or them going to Saudi Arabia. So that could be part of it too.
100%. Exactly. So, I mean, we've talked a little bit about how much money these guys have and the seemingly like unlimited funds they have at their disposal. We've seen crazy numbers thrown around, like them offering Messi a $1.5 billion contract for playing, 3 or 4 years in Saudi Arabia. So, could you see them doing this in other sports? Maybe individual sports like another tennis league or pickleball, who knows, or maybe another team sport like them taking over more teams in, you know, France or Spain or even the US. Who knows? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, kind of once you get into that sports world, and everyone, sports is a major moneymaker. It's a very lucrative entertainment source, and there's a lot of money involved in it. And at the end of the day, the as much as tourism and good public relations and all that, but the Saudi investment fund is an investment fund, and they're trying to make money. And that's a good place to go, And so, yeah, I mean, I could see, further involvement in soccer. They're going to obviously be having more involvement in golf. But, yeah, you could, they can get into other sports. I mean, basketball, football, baseball, like, yeah, some of these kind of like up and coming kind of niche sports like pickleball. And, yeah, I mean, I think, I think possibilities might be kind of endless, because they've got the money and,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
and even the most profitable sport in the world is always going to be looking for ways to, get involved with people who have a lot of money. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I think if, the PGA Live thing goes well, and the soccer teams that they own do well, that's just going to open more doors, and that's going to allow for more leagues and organizations and sports to be like, okay, like we're like, yeah, we'll work with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe, yeah, maybe as far as like the bad publicity or negative backlash, maybe the majority of it happens with this golf thing, and then after that there's more of an acceptance, because it
Yeah,
just becomes part of it. It becomes normalized. It just becomes part of, okay, well, yeah, they're here now. They're not going anywhere. So yeah,
exactly.
let's bring them into our sport.
I think that glass ceiling or whatever you want to call it has been broken. I
Right.
mean, there was a lot of outrage and backlash when they bought Newcastle United, but
Mhm.
they bought them. Now they're a Champions League team, and I'm sure if they're going to do the same in some of the other leagues, they probably can't own two leagues or two teams in England. But if they buy a team in Spain or Germany or wherever, I mean the again, that glass ceiling's been broken. There's already an acceptance of it. Maybe it's just the outrage is going to be a little bit less every time. And then I think about the NBA or NFL or MLB. Maybe they buy stakes in the league itself, or maybe they buy stakes in certain teams. I don't know if we'll ever see. Maybe we're a long way from them being like the controlling owners of a team. I don't see them
Mhm.
being like in a Mark Cuban type role where they're the visible owners. I think they understand some of the PR aspects of that, where they
Mhm.
might just throw some money at it. I think, and I think the NBA is a good example of being the most global of those sports and the most willing to accept some of that outside investment. I think they have a preseason game, I want to say, in the Emirates or something like that. I remember reading
Mhm.
something about this. So I think maybe out of those three, it'd probably be the NBA that's the most willing to take on some of that Saudi investment money.
Yeah. And I think, and you brought up them doing it in other countries too. I mean, I think that's probably more likely. I mean, I think America was going to be kind of the toughest, the thickest glass ceiling to break through, just because of, American sentiment towards Saudi Arabia, American sentiment towards Muslims, towards Muslim majority countries. Um, and so I think, now that they, well, getting involved in more American sports, American leagues like the PGA, after that is kind of done, then yeah, it'll open it up for more sports. But yeah, I also think like them getting involved in more countries too is like a higher likelihood as well.
Yeah, that seal has been broken, like you said
Mm-hmm.
with the PGA. They're already here. So and
Mm-hmm.
money talks, especially in sports. like you
Right.
said, the most profitable sports leagues in the world. The NFL is printing money, but they could always use some investment, some more broadcast rights. Maybe they have a exclusive broadcast deal in Saudi Arabia for all the expats or something like that.
Yeah.
Who knows what they might do? So we mentioned that you are the founder and an admin of founder and editor, sorry, of MuslimSportsTalk.com. I've read a couple of your articles there. It's great stuff. I really like the angle that you take, especially as a Muslim myself, just having that Muslim outlook on sports, but obviously it's not the only thing that determines your perspective. But why don't you tell us a little bit about the site and some of the work that you've been doing there?
Yeah, I launched the site a few years ago now, kind of after I converted myself, and just felt like it was, I wanted to kind of find a way to use what I'm good at, which was sports writing, sports editing, sports content, but with this new religion I'd embraced and this lifestyle, and just kind of I wanted to blend those things together, and I kind of saw it as like my way of, spreading the word about Islam. I mean, we're all called upon to, do our dawah and, tell people about the religion. I was like, well, this is kind of the best way I'm going to be able to do that. So, that was kind of the thought process behind launching the site. And over the years, it's been like really like, having, I don't know, off and on, I guess I'd say, like some periods where I'm doing a lot of content and some periods where it's kind of dry. Just due to, I mean, when I first started,
The life, due to life,
no,
right?
yeah. When I first started, I didn't have any kids, and now I have 3. So it's like, just you're busy, and you have another full-time job, and yeah. But just kind of more recently, I did a rebranding of the site and kind of shifted some of the angles I want to take, and kind of talking a little bit more about sports in general, and not everything being about like Muslim athletes, and kind of talking about more, always featuring Muslim athletes, but also talking about, topics in general sports that you could kind of put an Islamic spin on. So, hopefully with that, I mean, just, be able to get a lot more content out there. Looking to do more stuff with, videos and features and more interviews and things like that. So yeah, that's the kind of the gist of it, and some of the
It's really cool
coming up. Yeah. So
I mean, as like I said, as a Muslim, it's cool to see that, and it's something that I try to do is kind of, I mean, it's your identity, so that's how you're going to see things, that's how you're going to interpret things, and it's one of the things about like diversity of thought and diversity of identity, that you bring your own perspective to things, and of course, as Muslims, we're going to have a certain outlook on things for the most part, and I think there was a podcast we did a while back for Eid. I think you'd enjoy. It was a Muslim like NBA fantasy draft.
I just listened to that about like 2 days ago. Yeah.
Okay.
No, yeah. And I thought that was like a really cool idea. Yeah. And I mean, I was sitting there, I was listening to the episode. I'm like, pick this guy. Like, I was like listening along with you guys, and I'm trying to like, because I know the NBA pretty well, and I'm sitting there like, no, like, why'd you pick him? You could have went in this direction, and I'm like putting together my own team and everything. But yeah, that was a really cool episode. I really like that one.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to do a redo with you on as well. That'd be a lot of fun. I'd love to collaborate with you in the future on future pods and some features and things like that. It'd be really cool. So thank you for coming on, man. Really appreciate it. Where can people find you on Twitter, and maybe share the URL for your site as well?
Oh yeah, you could find me on Twitter and Instagram, just at Amaar Burton, AMAAR Burton, and then the URL for the site is just MuslimSportsTalk.com.
Yeah, make sure you check it out. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Make sure you subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this podcast. And you can find us on just about every social media platform at 4040 Vision Pod. Thanks, y'all. Thanks, Amaar. Appreciate you, man.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Big shout out once again to Amaar Burton of MuslimSportsTalk.com and The Ringer for coming on the podcast today. We have all kinds of great content planned for you this summer. Even though we're going through a bit of a lull when it comes to sports, there's still plenty of things to talk about, and we'll have plenty of amazing podcasts coming out every week. And we hope to have a bunch of 40/40 shorts coming out every week as well. So make sure you click that subscribe button wherever you're listening so you don't miss a single episode. Thanks, y'all. Peace out.